All right, welcome to the Kenyan historian, Benji Ndolo, political analyst, communication expert. My friend, welcome to the Kenyan historian. Good to have you, bro.
Jambo.
You're coming on the show when we have a lot happening in the country. Let's begin with the Adani Deals. The president cancelled the Adani Deals. What does it speak about Kenya, and what does it speak about the current government?
The president has to do a better job to be better at statecraft, to have things more neat. Why do I say so? It does not help a president who is already under siege. You live in Kenya, you already know what happened in June and July. When you're undertaking ambitious initiatives, ambitious interventions, you know the tax situation, you know the big proposals on affordable housing, you know the problems with SHA, the Social Health Authority. It doesn't help to have things, the perception that there are a lot of mistakes, because then that fuels the fire, that gives your enemies ammunition. And so Adani, in all senses and for all intents and purposes, was a mistake. And so you want to do less mistakes. You want to have less blunders. You don't want to touch things that are toxic. Adani is under hot pursuit from the US government. You know how dangerous that is. The FBI, there's no one you can bribe. There's nothing you can do to undermine the investigation.
The institutions are independent.
Yeah, so why would you have the president come anywhere near something like that?
Now, it just happened the other day, but some believe that the president could have done that long time ago when the issue came out in the public domain and people were saying this deal is not good for the country.
There was public outcry about Adani.
Yes.
I keep saying in all my different interactions and in all my different fora, Enoch, I keep going back to the Constitution.
Yes.
And this is not just for academic purposes. My advice to government and to anyone in public service is you have to use the Constitution as a reference point for anything you do. And so the Constitution places the citizen at the center of everything. That is Article 1.1 and that is Article 10. Just as a foundation, so that if people are really opposed to something, and if they're saying it stinks, it's a skunk, there are suspicions of bribery. Adani is in problems or in trouble for bribing public officials to get contracts in India. So it would be conceivable that they would want to do the same here. It's not going to solve your problem to have Chir at the head of that pushback, saying all these many things. That only goes to strengthen the suspicion and to incriminate the government further. And so where you have Kenya Airport employees up in arms, you had all airports in Kenya striking against Adani, you had Kenyans raising concerns about the length of the engagement to lease our airport for 30 years, some even suspecting that it's been sold. What does this serve the president to bullishly go ahead and force that? You have to take a step back and pull back. If the people really don't want it, unless you're building a dictatorship, you must hear the voice of the people, because it's always about the people.
He said,
and you must do everything in the people's best interest.
Let's probably hear what he said in Parliament. The first thing he said, and the things he pointed out, he said that he had listened to the people.
Is that true? The truth is that the pressure from the indictment in the New York court in the US is really what caused the government to buckle. But what I'm saying to the government is that it doesn't always have to act under complete siege. You didn't have to have even the Gen Z protests that we had to hear the people when they say that they need a more competent cabinet, they need a clean hands cabinet. Honestly, this stuff has been very frustrating, especially for those that supported the Kenya Kwanza administration, that had a lot of faith that a young President Ruto would vibrantly move and get things going. In fact, it's very shocking that for a lot of supporters now and even critics, it's like everything the president does now is benchmarked against Uhuru. Uhuru himself was a failed president. So it's so mind-boggling. Can you imagine that Uhuru now becomes some sort of hero? You just wonder what is wrong. And time is running out.
How does the Adani deal now, the cancellation, in the face of, in terms of communication? Because everything is about communication. Whatever you act, whatever you do, it sends a message. Which message did the happenings around the Adani, and especially just coming a day after the Adani, like the Adani himself and senior executives of the group were charged in the US? What message did it send to the people? Because I saw a lot of reactions from Kenyans who are in the first place mad at it, and especially if you remember very well, just those moments in the early mornings of Thursday, that is Opio and I, the CS for Energy came out and said they find no problem because there is no evidence. And then few hours later, the president cancels the deals.
You know, Enoch, the message that comes out of this is that pressure works, that public pressure always is what forces participatory government, that you must hear the voice of the people, that sometimes government is forced to react when under siege. However, that is not the best approach. It's always good for government to be a listening government, to be proactive, to not be reactive, to also be guided on principle. And so, indeed, pressure works. And the only thing that can come out of this is that the message is that Kenyans demand greater accountability on all engagements, be they public-private partnerships, be they engagements where public money is being spent, public money only, be they even in, you talked about communication, the government must communicate facts and truth at all times. And to say that the government is telling lies is not an attack on government, it's not to belittle government, it is to challenge government to do better, to communicate better, to communicate accurately, and actually to communicate also in tandem so that all ministries, departments, and agencies are kind of reading from the same script.
People say that the current president has gone against every promise he made to the people.
The people are very expectant. So I don't think he's gone against every promise. I think that, first of all, he overpromised. And so when you overpromise and underdeliver, always you will have a big problem as far as you will have a credibility gap or a trust deficit with the people, because they expect so much. They expect Hustler Fund to be delivering amazing lives for the people. They expect jobs. They expect that cost of living is going down, and it has gone down, but not quick enough and not big enough. So one of the areas that I have constantly critiqued is one of the big mistakes was the increment in fuel prices. This was a big blunder because it has a knock-on effect on everything else. So if you add fuel to 190, 180, then you bring down to 162, whereas you had started at 101, even though you're bringing down, it's not good enough. This is a problem.
Benji, as you continue, there's one thing that most Kenyans have had a problem with. And when we go back to June, it was one of the reasons Kenyans went to the street.
I was in the streets.
Taxation.
One thing I've learned is, for sure, Sikolia, taxation is a monster. If you tax people more, they will hate you. I have learned that firsthand with this situation here. Now, you cannot run a country without taxes. Yes. But the problem is, is services must be commensurate. So people will pay tax,
But they must.
but they'll ask themselves, what are we paying these taxes for?
Exactly.
And so the challenge here is that taxation has gone up, and indeed there is complete outcry, both vocally, very loudly, and also those who quietly detest the government. The problem is, like now we're in Nairobi County, the streets are dirty, the roads are non-existent. If you go all the way from Jogo Road round to downtown,
I recently did a story about Kilimani and
up to Kangundo Road, to
the drainage
Kilimani
system.
here, where houses begin at 100 million shillings if you are purchasing. No drainage, no sweeping, no collection of garbage, broken street lights. How can this be acceptable in a county that is wealthy, with such an informed and educated and enlightened citizenry? These are the reasons that people feel so much anger, is because you're paying all these taxes, but there is also a lot of corruption. So in a sense, it's like you're paying taxes for the money to be looted.
To be chewed, exactly.
It's I can't defend that.
Yes.
I can't defend that. Even if the president hired me today to defend that, you can't defend the indefensible. So what you can do is provide services, seamless services, dedicatedly. A city like Nairobi should run or have services 24 hours, in the sense that even when the citizenry are sleeping, this is when Sakaja should be sweeping corner to corner. Go to Kangundo Road, Joska. You have garbage everywhere. People are just dumping garbage on the side of the road. This is a health hazard. Now there are reports of log harvesting at night. We're not moving in the right direction. And the answer is not to gag people. The answer is not to abduct people. The government must stop doing things that agitate mwananchi further. And it's possible to do things properly.
The president talked about it in parliament.
This has been a very problematic case for two reasons. Number one, His Excellency Kindiki, the former Interior CS, expressed that a lot of the shootings you saw during the Gen Z protests and the kidnappings and arrests were not done by the police. Now, Kindiki is a senior lawyer. He's a professor of law. The second reason is, so that begs the question, then who was doing it? The second aspect of this issue, Enoch, is the president, as deputy president, expressed disgust at former DCI Kinoti for abductions, for harassment, using the criminal intelligence, criminal directorate, using officers. He talked about, this is all on your record.
Yes.
A container where Kinoti was using that container to torture Kenyans, to kill Kenyans. So Kenyans took him at his word.
And he called it, actually, they used to call it using the criminal justice system.
Exactly. To harass
Politicians
and prosecute.
yeah.
They used to call it state capture.
Yes.
So what I'm telling President Ruto is that if he can only go by his own words, by his own promises, he'd be fine. He'd not have a problem. All these funny things going on, kidnapping squads, etc., that have now extended to grabbing a head of opposition from a friendly country, that all of this cannot benefit the country. The country has to protect its image internationally. The country must be seen to uphold international law and human rights. The president doesn't need me to tell him that. Those are all very, very, very basic. If I could quote Marion Mutugi, Commissioner, Kenya National Commission on Human Rights. She was just on air the other day and she expressed, this is a government agency, that they had communicated to the government prior to the protests, just prior, that there is a lot of disillusionment on the ground, there's a lot of anger, and there's a lot of anxiety. If a government cannot understand its own agency saying, this is the situation on the ground, what business would that government have to continue to be in power? And so we're just saying that the president can do better. That's a fact. People are very disappointed. And to his credit, the president acknowledged in parliament that they forestalled a credit crisis by forestalling a default situation on the national debt, that prices of a lot of things have come down, sugar production has gone up, coffee production, milk production should go up as well. But he acknowledged that a lot of Kenyans are finding it very hard on a day-to-day basis. People don't have money in their pocket. There's no exchange of money in the economy. Therefore, even if inflation comes down in the number, it means nothing if your family goes to bed hungry. So you acknowledge that. Now it's time to work on those basics for interventions that will trigger money to exchange hands in the economy and thereby boost trade, boost economy, and uplift livelihoods. That has to be done urgently. And as I said, we don't have a lot of time. Why? We only have about 2 years for work and a whole year for campaign.
Sometimes it
What can you do
starts
in 2
earlier.
years? Exactly.
Yeah. Sometimes you might have even 2 years for campaigns. We've seen it. We've seen it many times.
It's a tough situation. The president is not popular. And I'm not saying that always you have to work towards popularity. But you must hear people when they cry out. What business would you have in leading people by force? When people cry out, you must pause and see why they're crying out.
You know, when you say like that, there is the current concern. You know, we've had the issue of corruption and everything like that. People feel that corruption has actually increased. But the issue that is of concern to Kenya now is SHA and SHIF. People are being taxed a lot of money. 2.7% of your income is a lot of money. And yet, as we speak, people are not seeing the fruit of those deductions. At the end of it, we have seen reports, even in media. We saw Citizen TV publish a report about people struggling actually to access medical services, even with the SHA thing.
So, Enoch, I happen to believe that SHA can actually work. If you look at the composition of the Social Health Authority, if you look at the concept, compared to what was there before. So,
when you compare with the NHIF,
yes, when you compare with the National Health Insurance Fund, you find that somebody like yourself, who's a senior journalist, somebody else who's a CEO, somebody else who's a cabinet secretary, compared to a waitress or a waiter in a restaurant, you find that you have different abilities financially, economically.
Yes, that's fine.
And so if you kind of have a progressive scale for withholding of the health fund, then you can find that the stronger ones can kind of help to carry the weaker. So from a concept standpoint, it can actually work. It's all about accountability. It's all about how you do the implementation. All right? And as I was saying on another interview recently, I'd given the president a 5-step template on what he must do on any project to ensure that he succeeds. Number one, as you do implementation of any project in any ministry, you must look at the technical know-how. The person leading that must have absolute technical know-how. Number two, they must have a reform plan. A reform plan is what helps them look at, this is what NHIF was, this is what SHIF can be. Therefore, how do we actually go about a smooth and clear implementation of the same? Having said that, you then also have to have the ability to communicate, communication skills, to communicate very clearly on what you're doing so that the public and the government across understands this is where health is, this is where the issues and the pitfalls are, this is where we need to go. So communication skills, if we have people just talking anyhowly and giving half-baked, data. Let me finish. How are you going to have buy-in, have public buy-in? All of these things are meaningless if you don't have integrity. So the people running these schemes, government programs, must have integrity. They must have the kind of dedication and integrity that it takes to achieve the deliverable. And then lastly, they must have passion. Someone can have integrity, but they are not committed. They must have passion to deliver. These 5 things is what can help SHA succeed, is what can help the Hustler Fund get to the next level as far as performance, because this is what Kenyans want. So this is a template I'd given.
When you talked about the SHA shift, I normally call it the SHA shift, shifting from NHIF to SHA. Many people are questioning about, especially the if you are paying. I understand the concept and I understand how you explain, and you've explained it very well. I know many people don't understand the pyramid thing when it comes to sharing the burden. But many people were asking. For example, I saw a place where they had clarified on when it comes to consultation, like the money that is allocated to consultation is just 900 Kenyan shillings per annum. And so people are asking, why should I pay a year, like over 100, for those who are like salaried, those who are maybe 300, yes, and in a year 100 and above, and then I'm only allocated 900 Kenyan shillings for consultation in a year and per house.
So there's a guy called Dr. Thuranira. He's the tech lead on this program.
Yes.
I'm going to take that question to him. I was actually chatting him earlier this afternoon, because I had done a radio show yesterday where I got a lot of calls. It's one of the vernacular radio stations.
Yes.
And, you don't want to leave people feeling, even though I'm not a civil servant, you don't want to leave people feeling lost and just at sea. And so where they were calling the station with certain questions and the station is not sure, I'd allowed the station then to forward the same to my personal number, and then I can try to get to the tech guys at SHA to get that done. I didn't know that consultation is allocated only 900 shillings.
I saw from somewhere
which is
HR had shared with the...
Yeah, so I'm going to seek clarification on that. And in any program, you must have a logical approach to, distribution. There's no point of collecting 100,000. Then you allocate 900 to...
And
50,000 to cancer.
Most hospitals, 900 is not even enough for one visit.
Unless a lot of hospitals, consultation could be 5,000 shillings. Yeah. Unless you want Kenyans to continue to say the usual things of pesa imebiwa, pesa inaibiwa. So you must be proactive. Yes. So I'm going to look at that, but that doesn't sound right. It doesn't sound logical.
As we finish on issues about the president and his government, stalled projects, there are too many.
There's a lot of dysfunction and disaffection with government. So stalled projects leads me to one of my favorite topics, pending bills. In what society, in what world do you grow anything with over 600 billion in pending bills? In fact, I was going to tweet earlier and I forgot. I have 2 friends of mine who work for the US government, Kenyans. One in Nairobi, another one in Washington. And they both tell me the same thing. Benji, if you do any work for us, by law, within 30 days, tumekulipa. It is disgraceful to have stalled projects and endless pending bills. It reflects very badly on government. And this is something that, as you saw Trump trying to do with the entry of Elon Musk, just to shake things up a bit, to have a department of efficiency within government and of reduction of spending, which is one of my favorite topics. Without doing these kinds of radical things, William Ruto could not even have a chance at being seen as a successful president. You must have radical shift and absolute willingness. And one of the challenges that the president has, but which he can fix, is to quickly close the gap between what he says and how Kenyans view his deliverable, so that people can stop saying that the president is lying. It is disgraceful when Kenyans themselves contemptuously dismiss presidential
as you say, I don't know if you've seen someone who's coming up with some funny memes.
Yeah, it's
the one that's trending on viral, social media.
All over the place, I mean, all of these hurt the credibility and the image of the presidency and even of the country.
Yes.
And so, unfinished projects all over the place, it reeks of incompetence, accompanied by pending bills.
This letter cannot be enough without you telling Ruto what he can do to change the course of this ship, the ship that is his government.
I actually thought you were going to ask about Gashaga, but that's fine.
We are going to Gachagua.
That's fine.
We are finishing with Ruto.
To his credit, you know, people say there's corruption, etc. And most regimes usually have a flagship corruption project. Moi had Goldenberg and many other issues. Kibaki had Anglo leasing, and Uhuru had Eurobond. So to William Ruto's credit, funny enough, there's no flagship corruption project associated with the fifth president. Now, I don't know if this is because they're doing it in a very smart way, so there's been a lot of concealment, I don't know. But the William Ruto administration have not been caught red-handed. That's encouraging because someone would have thought that by now, Ruto would have had 2 huge corruption scandals just based on how the public views the administration. That tells me there's hope. What the president needs to do is to be very resolute and very disciplined on execution of mandate as per the plan and on deliverable or delivery of the same. The president should avoid gimmicks. The president tried, under siege to get Honorable Raila to help him. That move leaves a lot to be desired because it was very cosmetic. You can see his ministers also came out with egg on the face, over eagerly trying to defend the indefensible in the name of Adani. What President Ruto needs to do is just to, because he has a lot of energy. He looks a bit overwhelmed. He looks like someone who doesn't sleep a lot. The president just needs to get a team that is competent, coherent, and have a strategy that works because there's no time. If he doesn't do that, the going will be very rough.